Imagine a situation where you find yourself at the epicenter of a heated argument. Your pulse quickens, and arguments swarm in your head, ready to burst forth like arrows. You are consumed by the need to respond, defend your position, prove you are right. But what if, at the very moment this acute desire to react arises, you are already defeated? Modern society has conditioned us to believe that strength lies in a loud voice, in the ability to defend one's point of view, impose it on others, and always have a sharp retort ready. However, one philosopher held a completely different view. In his opinion, true strength lies not in outshouting the opponent or forcefully convincing them of your correctness, but in the conscious decision to remain silent. In today's world, we are surrounded by incessant noise. Social media, endless discussions, people competing in eloquence and striving to have the last word. But few realize that in this chaos of voices, true power belongs to those who do not raise their voices. They observe, wait, and when they decide to speak, each of their words gains the weight of a stone thrown into the still surface of a lake. Nature has long understood the truth that many ignore. The need to speak, answer, and justify oneself betrays a hidden weakness. Those who desperately seek to be heard are, deep down, looking for confirmation of their significance. They are merely reacting to external stimuli, and whoever reacts inevitably finds themselves under someone else's control. On the other hand, those who have mastered the art of silence possess a special kind of authority that does not need anyone's approval. Think about the images of those who have left an indelible mark on your life. Were they incessant talkers, or those whose few utterances were etched into your memory like a precise strike? Skillfully used silence creates an aura of mystery, evokes genuine respect, and creates an atmosphere of slight discomfort. And it is discomfort that makes people think about the essence of things. Therefore, it is worth asking yourself, who are you? The master of your words or a slave to the insatiable need to be heard? Do you have the wisdom to understand when to speak and when it is better to let silence do its work? The truth is that silence is not just a conscious choice. It is a real challenge, a challenge that few are capable of accepting. Take a look around the world. It has never been so noisy. Everyone strives to express their opinion. Everyone longs to be heard. Everyone is sure that they must constantly say something. Social networks have transformed communication into public battles, where victory is achieved not by seeking the truth, but by the loudness of the voice and the endless repetition of the same thing. However, nature itself warns us. This obsession, to speak, to answer, to shout your position to the whole world, is not a manifestation of strength, but merely weakness, cleverly disguised as bravado. Stop for a moment and think, why do people experience this almost overwhelming need to constantly express themselves? The answer is simple. Deep down, they are driven by fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of being forgotten, fear that their silence will be misinterpreted as a sign of weakness and submission. In the pursuit of significance, people seek to fill any void with a stream of words, often devoid of deep conviction, just to avoid the oppressive feeling of their own insignificance. However, as the philosopher shrewdly noted, and what few today are able to realize, true greatness is attained by those who have mastered the art of silence. Such a person becomes a mystery, a figure that cannot be easily classified or predicted, and unpredictability, as we know, always surpasses obviousness in its power. The world, drowning in noise, sets its insidious traps. It creates the deceptive impression that those who most loudly assert themselves, who persistently impose their opinions, who react the fastest, are the winners. But this is the lot of the weak. The philosopher viewed life as a battle arena, where the warrior who rushes into battle first does not always win. Often, the triumph goes to the one who knows how to wait, who observes what is happening, who notices the opponent's weaknesses before striking. Just look at the true masters of strategy, whether in philosophy, warfare, or business. They do not waste words in vain, do not rush to answer, do not exhaust themselves with fruitless attempts to prove something to someone. Their strength lies in the ability to listen and observe before acting. Wise people realize that Sometimes the most advantageous strategy is to give the opponent the opportunity to exhaust themselves in fruitless attempts to understand their intentions. Philosophical teachings consider silence not as a manifestation of weakness, but as a demonstration of inner strength and command of the situation. Those who have mastered the art of silence are able to control the course of events, skillfully setting the rhythm of interaction. By maintaining imperturbable silence at key moments, they force the interlocutor to say more than they should, revealing their vulnerable sides and inadvertently exposing themselves to public view. Deep down, modern society harbors an undisguised antipathy towards silence, as it inevitably entails the necessity of self-analysis, which, in turn, poses a serious threat to those whose identity is built on the shaky foundation of external noise and fleeting impressions. Therefore, everyone should ask themselves, how much control do they have over their own voice? Or are they just another lost soul in the continuous chaos of the modern world? Do they possess the ability to discern the moments when it is necessary to speak and when it is better to remain silent? Or are they overcome by an inexplicable anxiety in the emptiness of their own absence? After all, if a person cannot bear the silence, it is quite possible that it is trying to convey something to them that they are afraid to hear. Philosophical teachings assert that the vast majority of people live in the shackles of illusions that concern moral principles, notions of good and evil, as well as concepts of what is right and wrong. From the earliest childhood, we are taught to conform to generally accepted norms, to unquestioningly follow established rules, and to show due respect for conventions. But what if we declare that generally accepted norms and rules are created not to elevate the individual, but to tame them? The concept of the Übermensch, Superman, is not the cultivation of muscles, the accumulation of wealth, or the pursuit of high social status. It is about a much deeper and more comprehensive concept: absolute control over oneself. The Übermensch does not succumb to impulsive urges, does not feel the need for the approval of others, and does not feel the need to prove anything to anyone. They independently form their system of values, establish their own rules, and pave a unique path through life. One of the most important tools of this higher being is silence. It is worth considering. What happens when a person remains silent in a situation where everyone expects an answer? Silence provokes discomfort, creates an atmosphere of mystery, and changes the balance of power. By refusing an immediate reaction, the individual forces others to cope with their anxiety on their own. The philosopher argued that the common person experiences a panic fear of emptiness. They need to fill everything with words, explanations, and justifications. The Übermensch, however, realizes that silence can be much more convincing than any argument. It is necessary to see the difference between a true leader and someone who is forced to shout to be heard. A true leader does not need to raise their voice or justify their every action. Their presence is so convincing and unwavering that it commands respect in itself. Conversely, those who constantly talk, trying to convince others of their strength, skill, and superiority, only betray their inner insecurity. This incessant chatter is nothing more than an admission of one's own weakness. The philosopher clearly saw this difference. The one who talks a lot, reacts to everything, and worries about everything is under external control. They are a slave to their emotions and a hostage to the opinions of others. But the one who knows how to be silent, who carefully chooses their words and allows others to exhaust themselves trying to understand them, is the true master of the situation. The Übermensch is not affected by the judgments of others. They do not need the approval of others to confirm their own significance. That is why they do not waste energy on pointless attempts to prove anything. Awareness of one's own strength comes not from an abundance of spoken words, but from the silent influence that a person's very presence exerts. A logical question arises. Who controls speech? The person or the speech controls them? Are they the master of their own voice? Or are they like a puppet, twitching to the beat of other people's opinions? After all, truly powerful figures do not feel an acute need to be heard at any cost. Have you noticed how much confusion silence causes in others? Even a brief pause in a conversation can prompt someone to fill it with a stream of words, sometimes meaningless and ill-considered. Silence creates a void, and a person by their nature cannot tolerate a vacuum. They need to fill the space that has formed, to feel control over the situation. However, life reveals a harsh truth. The one who owns the silence owns the minds of others. Silence is a powerful psychological tool that can disarm, confuse, and force an interlocutor to open up without resorting to physical force. When a person expects an answer and does not receive it, their mind plunges into a state of uncertainty, frantically trying to unravel the meaning of what is happening. Ignoring someone can be perceived as contempt, as possessing some hidden knowledge, or as a careless word that is too late to regret. The other person's mind turns into a confusing labyrinth of doubts, while your own remains calm. The wise man realized that silence can serve as a kind of test of strength, a trial of fortitude. History is full of examples of outstanding strategists, unsurpassed masters of persuasion, and leaders whose names are etched in the annals of time. They are united by one common trait: the ability to master both word and silence. They never waste words, preferring to wait until their opponent is exhausted in a verbal race, until they expose their vulnerable spots and become entangled in the labyrinth of their own arguments. Silence is like a mirror in which the true face of the interlocutor is reflected, their insecurity and defenselessness. Remember an ordinary argument, a discussion between two people. Who in this situation holds the reins of control? Is it the one who succumbs to emotions, who spews out a stream of arguments, striving at all costs to convince the opponent, or the one who remains calm, watching the verbal eruption, allowing the other to exhaust themselves alone? The first only reacts, allowing emotions to take over, while the second coolly manages the course of events. When a person lapses into silence, they put their interlocutor in a difficult position. Silence can be interpreted in different ways, as a sign of disinterest, contempt, or even superiority. But one thing remains undeniable: the silent person is not controlled, and this awareness is enough to cause discomfort in their opponent. Ancient philosophers saw in silence a manifestation of inner strength and self-control. The ability to endure silence without feeling the need to fill the void with meaningless words testifies to self-control. A person who controls themselves does not need the approval of others, does not feel the need to justify themselves or prove their case. It is this independence that makes them such an imposing figure, inspiring, if not fear, then apprehension. In the flow of everyday life, how often does an individual experience discomfort caused by silence? How many times has there been a desire to interrupt the pause just to avoid awkwardness? And more importantly, how many cases of manipulation have occurred because someone was aware of the power of appropriate silence? After all, the one who can control silence, in fact, controls the situation. Silence is not only a tool for influencing others, but also a test of one's own resilience. The truth is that most people dislike silence. They utter words not because of the need to express a thought, but because of the fear of emptiness. Philosophical minds have long realized that to achieve true strength, one must bravely face this discomfort. It is worth considering how often there has been a feeling of needing to explain, justify, fill the silence with words that, in essence, were superfluous. Has it been noticed that in moments of silence, those around begin to show anxiety? Silence can be interpreted as arrogance, indifference, or even aggression. This is because society accustoms people to striving for constant approval. Maintaining silence means refusing to play this game, which causes anxiety in others. The philosopher viewed silence as a form of protest. The one who keeps silent in a noisy environment expresses their position without words. They do not participate in this game, do not seek to conform. This causes fear in others, since they do not know how to react to someone who does not follow generally accepted norms, who does not panic because of misunderstanding. The desire to be understood deep down is a form of dependence. Those who need understanding to some extent are asking for permission to exist. However, a person striving for self-improvement does not seek approval, but creates their own values, regardless of the opinion of others. This requires courage available to few, since enduring silence means bearing a heavy burden of loneliness and recognizing that often no one will share the choice made. Just recall the outstanding thinkers, visionaries, and revolutionaries of the past. Their innovative ideas were not immediately recognized, often subjected to ridicule, neglect, and fierce resistance. However, they did not need loud statements to be heard. They steadfastly endured the oppressive silence of misunderstanding and rejection, continuing to move forward, since truth does not need approving exclamations for its existence. It is worth thinking about your own life. How often has there been a need to explain your actions, prove your case, and seek approval? And how many times have these efforts led to real changes? And how many times was the search for explanations only a reflection of your own fear of being rejected? The philosopher urges us to overcome this fear and ask ourselves, is there really something to say, or are the words dictated by a fear of silence? Is understanding from others truly necessary, or is there enough strength to move forward without that need? After all, those who fear silence will never attain true freedom. Silence is not simply the absence of words, it is a powerful tool, an effective strategy, and a unique game of power. However, like any weapon, it should be used thoughtfully and at the right moment. The philosopher does not advocate for a complete rejection of speech, but rather emphasizes the need to speak only when it is truly necessary. In this regard, it is useful to recall all the conversations that have taken place in the last month. How many of them were truly significant? How much was merely meaningless noise? How often did you catch yourself explaining things that didn't need explaining, responding to empty provocations, and trying to convince those who, deep down, will never change their minds? How many words were wasted just to fill an awkward silence? The philosopher views such behavior as a form of psychological slavery. Those who constantly speak invariably react to the world around them, striving to justify their existence. People who can utter words only at the call of the soul at the right moment and with an awareness of the significance of each utterance are endowed with genuine power and deserved respect. Consider the great strategists of past eras. Their speech was concise, each word carefully considered. They masterfully wielded the art of retreat, patient waiting, and wise silence, allowing others to reveal themselves. And when they finally decided to speak, their words gained irresistible power because they were rare, measured, and impossible to ignore. The problem with most people lies in their thoughtless speech, impulsive reactions, and desire to insist on their own way at all costs. Without realizing it, they trap themselves in predictability. However, the wise understood that unpredictability is a powerful weapon. One whose actions do not meet expectations becomes an enigma, and an enigma is always more attractive and powerful than transparency. How can this philosophy be put into practice, and how can one learn to strategically use silence? First of all, it is necessary to develop the ability to observe, to learn to analyze the situation before giving an answer. The vast majority of people, before they have fully grasped the essence of what has been said, rush to give an answer. They are driven by an almost irresistible desire to express their point of view, make corrections, or enter into a polemic. However, one who has tamed the urge to talk too much prefers to wait, carefully observe what is happening, thoroughly analyze the situation, and only then make a reasoned decision about the advisability of a response. Secondly, one should ask oneself, does this conversation really require my participation? Not every dialogue deserves to have your time and attention spent on it. Often, discussions are nothing more than games of ego, fruitless battles in which neither side is interested in finding the truth. If the conversation does not carry any useful information, if the interlocutor does not show the slightest desire to listen to someone else's opinion, then what is the point of wasting your energy on it? As a wise philosopher would say, let them continue to speak into the void. Thirdly, when you do decide to speak, do so with dignity and conviction. If you train yourself to be brief, then every time you open your mouth, people will freeze in anticipation of what they will hear. Your words will gain weight and significance, which will never be characteristic of those who are used to talking incessantly. There is no need to try to convince everyone. It is enough to speak in such a way that every word you utter has meaning. After all, in the end, it is not so much the frequency and length of speeches that matter, but the impact they have on others. There is a dilemma. Who controls speech, the person or the speech itself? Does the individual really think through each of their statements, or do they simply react mechanically to external stimuli, like a programmed mechanism striving to pour out all their thoughts? The sages of antiquity claimed that laconic but purposeful people always attract attention. One who has tamed silence will never become a hostage to chaotic noise. Ultimately, it all comes down to one fundamental question. Is silence a tool in the hands of a person, or does it dictate the rules to them? Philosophers viewed life as an arena of struggle between forces, where the weak, seeking to justify or convince, are excessively verbose. The strong, on the other hand, do not need constant approval. They realize that an irrepressible need to speak incessantly is merely a manifestation of inner insecurity. They understand that the absence of words can sometimes be far more significant than thousands of flowery speeches. Silence is not just emptiness. It is a mirror, reflecting the true essence of a person. When an individual falls silent, they force the world to perceive them without embellishment or distractions, exposing their true self. And for many, this becomes an unbearable test. After all, most people build their identity based on the reactions of others. But what happens if you deprive them of this reaction? What if you don't give the expected answer? Who will a person become without this age-old need to confirm their significance? The sage deeply believed that only a few are truly capable of realizing and accepting the full significance of personal silence, of enduring the burden of this silence. However, those who do master this difficult art gain an unwavering strength of spirit. After all, when a person does not need excuses, it does not matter what others say about them or how they are evaluated. It's interesting to consider when was the last time each of us chose silence in a situation where words were expected of us. Have you noticed the impact of such behavior on others? Share your thoughts and observations in the comments. If this idea has touched you, raised questions, or even created some internal challenge, don't stop there. The next video will allow you to delve into this topic even further. Regardless of your current beliefs, it is important not to miss the opportunity to broaden your horizon of understanding. Watch it now.